Joining me right here, Charlie Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor, Fox News contributor, and Katie Pavlich, townhall.com editor, and also a Fox News contributor. Katie, I know neither of you are housing experts, all right?
Yeah,
but
to put it mildly.
But I thought I'd throw that in today, mostly because I'm tired of reporting about murders and rapes across the border. I mean, I'm quite serious about that.
Yeah.
But the CNN debate is coming up, okay, and it's going to be a big thing. And I think this housing story needs to be ventilated, needs more airtime, because these numbers today were awful. Worst prices in 30 years, high mortgage rates, kids can't afford a home, and if you're in a home, you have trouble paying your mortgage. What do you make of it?
Well, I would say anybody who goes to apply for a mortgage or anybody who is paying one, who understands what the rates was under Trump and what it is now. There's a lot of people who maybe couldn't afford it then, but they really can't afford it now because it increases your price and payment per month by thousands of dollars. So you don't have to, I would say people who are doing that are more experts on mortgage rates and housing than anybody in the Biden administration. When it comes to the debates, you know, Trump is talking about Biden's incompetence, which may be true, but I think more importantly, he has to talk about how this administration is doing this to people on purpose. They are deliberately driving up prices. They are deliberately making it more difficult for you to have energy, your gas stove, for you to have the car that you want that you can actually afford through all of these regulations. So reminding everybody that the reason why things are not affordable, why you can't go to the store and get the same amount that you used to, is because the policies that the Biden administration has implemented at every single level are trickling down to make it so people in this country can't afford anything. And on the affordability crisis for the housing, this is an issue that young people are actually concerned with.
Just where I was going. No, you read your mind. I was going to go to Charlie. I think, you know, you see Trump with large gains in the polls among young people. Young people, you hear this again and again. I can't afford to buy a house. I don't have one. I can't afford to buy one. I'd like to have one. Wherever you live, they'd like to have one. I think this is growing. And the other thing is, Trump's doing rather well with women. There was a big New York Times story yesterday or the day before about that. I don't want to get into trouble here, but the woman of the house tends to have the checkbook. By the way, I haven't had a checkbook in 30 years, so I just full disclosure.
Your wife does not let you have a checkbook.
That's exactly right. My saintly wife will not let me have a checkbook, and with good reason. Okay, she's a very smart lady. But the point is, they know how difficult the affordability crisis is. They know about borrowing rates, mortgage rates, credit card rates. They know about insurance rates. And they know about taxes and prices. So this is a big thing. Now, you tell me, Trump's going to presumably talk about this. What's Biden going to say? What is his defense going to be?
Well, he's going to try to argue against math, and math is pretty obvious. And I think it's this basic math that has shown these numbers with whether it's black voters or Hispanic voters or even women voters. To me, the most shocking numbers that we've seen have been with young voters. You can't actually believe, it's almost like they must have the numbers wrong when you look at the swing from Joe Biden to Donald Trump among those young voters. And I agree with you. I think that it is probably massively, it's driven by everything, but it has to be driven by this, the shock that young people in their 20s, when they go out and try to buy housing. And nobody is better at sort of vivifying and making these things very clear to people than Donald Trump. He's very good. In fact, it gets him in trouble. He's so clear with some of these things sometimes. But one of the things I wish he would point out is when you have millions of new people coming into the country, and then the federal government is putting them up, housing them for free all over the country, you don't have to be Larry Kudlow to know that that's going to drive up housing prices. And so one of the biggest drivers of this, of the increase in housing costs are all of Biden's illegal migrants that are being put up for free by the federal government.
Trump occasionally makes that point. It's a very interesting point. Trump is saying the enormous expenses of the open border and the migrants running through the interior of the country will, at some point, cut into our whole entitlement system. I mean, it's just good.
It already is.
There's a crowding out in economic terms, but it's just dollars and cents terms. You look at this city. I mean, I'm familiar with all the woes of this city. They can't afford anything. They're spending so much money, $12 billion plus, on being a sanctuary city, which is not a cool thing. Trump does make that point. Probably should make it some more.
Well, the left has been trying to argue that this illegal immigration issue is just about compassion and people coming for a better life. Trump has to make the economic argument. It undercuts everything, whether it's medical care system, the school system, public safety and law enforcement, while New York and other cities across the country are now taking money out of the budgets that American taxpayers pay for to give it to these projects for illegal immigrants and just to navigate this problem. The people who are paying the price are paying it with their dollars and cents, and things are being stolen from them and reallocated to people who didn't come here the right way and who are going to cost more. And also, they also have created these little mini economic environments where they cause a supply problem in places like Texas, small towns. You'll go back to the baby formula crisis when there was a shortage of baby formula for everybody else in the country, but they had stockpiles of it in the shelters at the border.
Have they solved that?
They haven't completely
Not
solved
completely,
it.
from what I
But
gather.
there's another example of how this does become an issue in terms of inflation and prices and a supply problem on a number of basic levels.
I want to move on. I got a couple other beauties for you, Charlie. I've been saving this up for you all week.
All week, no pressure.
Oh, good.
The Bidens are so inept. The Bidens cannot even overspend properly. Okay, they can't even do this. So there's a great story. You may have seen this story. They've appropriated $42 billion for broadband, internet broadband expansion into rural areas and poor areas, okay? Which sounds like a noble mission, right? The trouble is, there are so many DEI and ESG woke requirements baked into it that they can't spend it. Not a nickel of the $42 billion has been spent. Now, hang on a second. DEI, climate mandates, and my favorite, contractors must hire convicted felons and advance racial equity in order to get their money. So there's $42 billion, which, by the way, is a complete outrage. Nobody needs $42 billion for this. It's already been done through satellites and the rest of it. But they don't have enough convicted felons. Of course, they could come to New York and just ship them out. But I don't want to go there.
Well,
but, Charlie, I thought of you in this. Don't ask me why. But I thought it'd
ladies
be
and gentlemen,
perfect for you.
Welcome to the utopia that they've been
They
promising
can't even
you.
overspend properly.
Literally can't do it. And I think that Elon Musk, who is, whatever you think of him, is a free market guy and figures out how to do things with the free market.
Yes.
Pointed out, you could, and I can't remember the exact figures, but I think it was like that he could have hooked these people up with Starlink to the order of 120 million people or something like this.
Yes.
For the amount of money, and they would all be on lightning speed internet access.
I mean, you couldn't. We looked at this in the Trump administration. You couldn't spend $40 billion on this. We budgeted for $12 billion, I think, and didn't even want to do that. But we're kind of forced.
Well, it seems like I'm a fan of ESG and DEI now. If it prevents the government from spending
I
money,
know.
it's better than the Buttigieg approach, where they spend billions of dollars to put in 7 electric vehicle chargers. I mean, this could be much worse.
Wait, that's coming later in the show. I know this is too good to be true. But you got to be a convicted felon in order to get the $42 billion. Okay.
So Trump could get it at least. That's good.
Oh, God. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate. Actually, Trump, Hunter, we're saving a seat for Joe. One more thing before we cash out of this segment. Mr. Trump, this is sound, I think, right? We have sound from Trump talking to the Silicon Valley. Yeah. Here's Trump on immigration, helping kids so all the brilliant people can come to America. Here's Trump.
What I want to do and what I will do is you graduate from a college, I think you should get automatically as part of your diploma a green card to be able to stay in this country. You need brilliant people.
So I heard him say this. Now, this is he's always had this view, but I heard him say this, refresh this view at the BRT, the Business Roundtable CEOs that I moderated with him last week. But he's repeating it, and it's a very important point. I mean, on the one hand, tough on the border, close the border, remain in Mexico, deportation, and so forth. Yes, yes, yes. But, Katie, he softens it with this point of view. We want the smartest people to come here, assuming they're legit. And if you get a college diploma, we'll give you a green card. What do you think?
Well, I would hope that there were some criteria for the kind of degrees that you have to get in order to get a green card. American citizenship is a very precious thing, and a green card is essentially the first ticket to get there. And so I think there should be a few more requirements. If you're a women's studies major,
there you go.
Maybe you won't be getting a green card here.
How about Middle East studies?
But if you're helping out, in other areas that are beneficial to the economy, then maybe.
And also, Charlie, he added H-1B visas into that, too. So the technology people of Silicon Valley who are starting to pony up big dollars for him, they're happy about that, too. What do you think?
There are legitimate problems with just a blanket thing, but he didn't say just a blanket thing, or he sort of did, but he's smart enough that I think when he gets into the weeds, he'll pick it apart. Yeah. But a gender studies major doesn't get a green card. But it also underscores the most important thing about this guy. He's not an ideologue. No. He's not some crazed Washington guy. He's willing to entertain whatever makes sense. And that's why I would have a lot more faith in his ability to navigate this and come up with something sensible so we get people that help the country and stop getting all these people who are going to hurt them.
Right. If he wins, and he's going to come in and he's going to have, deportation. He's going to try to deport people already here, criminal people, close the border, remain in Mexico, all these things. This will be part of his negotiation. That's what he likes to do. He is a negotiator. Yeah. And I think it's very effective, and I think people forget that about him.
And we wouldn't have the problem in the first place if the Trump policies had stayed in place. Right. And so every single person who's been murdered, raped, whatever, by Biden migrants would not have happened if Donald Trump had been president.
Yes, indeed. Katie Pavlich, Charlie Hurt, thank you very much.